I'm glad to be here. I will be talking about three main lessons from my research on the Egyptian Revolution of 2011 and the Arab Spring. The first lesson is about social media, and the second is about organization, and the third is about protest tactics. The first lesson is about social media. Many activists and ordinary folks say that the Egyptian revolution was a Twitter revolution or Facebook revolution, and there was lots of exaggeration about the role of social media in the revolution. My research shows that yes, this was true. Social media was critical in the revolution. Activists used social media to plan things together. We know about We All Khalid Said Facebook page that was the starting point of mobilization or the initial mobilization of the uprisings, among other things. But to be frank, the role of social media is very complex than this. For example, there were 5 days internet blackout in Egypt. Activists used old-fashioned methods of communications during these days. Also, some folks had satellite phones during the blackout. People used leaflets. People used landlines to communicate. It was a very complex pictures. And of course, there's hashtags and so forth. So here's my lesson for you. The use of social media in activism will work better on two conditions, or at least things that I found in my research. First, we need to do some quick research about who has access, who does not, um, how many people do have Facebook pages, or people are on Twitter. So to think about whether to create a hashtag or to launch a Facebook page for our events and so forth. So in other words, social media, we need to do our job first before we decide about what to do in social media in our activism. Second, campaigns. Social media campaigns will work better if we are in touch with folks on the ground. We can't separate the online organizing from offline organizing. So remember that social movements don't happen only online, but when online and offline work together. Of course, sometimes online campaigns may be enough, but you need to do your research. That's why I was suggesting to do some research to know your movement, to know your audience better first. Now, second lesson. It's about organization and organizing. There were lots of discussions in the public sphere, scholars, activists alike. They say that the Egyptian revolution was leaderless revolution. This is the same talk about Occupy Wall Street and Black Lives Matter. By leaderless here, the reference is that the absence of traditional leadership, like MLK, for example, was the civil rights movements, and the absence of hierarchy. The question here about traditional leadership also means that controlling or directing activists, and there's also the discussion here or the reference that this is a horizontal organizing, okay? And grassroots organizing and horizontal organizing is great, and organization and leadership is bad. And that there is a conflation of leaderless means lack of organization. There were many leaders in the Egyptian revolution. My research shows that there was many leaders, and this discussion is very simplistic. But maybe not in the old-fashioned way. There's lots of organizing in Tahrir Square. Leaderless, or the presence of many leaders, does not mean the absence of organization. My research shows in Tahrir that there was lots of interplay between organization and spontaneity. Okay, of course, organization and spontaneity is a huge topic in social movements. So here is my lesson for you. Organization still matters. And horizontalism or horizontal organizing or horizontal movement does not mean lack of organizations and lack of planning. Maybe our newer generations, like millennial generation, are about newer meaning of leadership and organizations. Still, the lesson here is that organization still matters. We need organization and planning. thinking and planning together is still needed for any movements. Now, the third lesson about protest tactics. If you ask anybody about what do you know about the Egyptian revolution, they will point at a picture of Tahrir Square. This is true. The main actions of the revolution took place in Tahrir. Social movement scholars talk about what they describe here as protest repertoires or protest tactics, to speak of a simpler terminology. My research, however, shows that there were lots of complex stories about why protesters chose Tahrir and why Tahrir became the center of actions. There were important stories and critical actions that took place outside Tahrir. After the revolution, protesters continued to go to Tahrir, and they thought they can repeat or replicate the revolution. And the military regime was prepared with military tanks in Tahrir. The elements of surprise was missing. My lesson here for you is that protest tactics or repertoires are context-specific and time-specific. They may work in one time and not in another. We need to ask ourselves questions about, for example, why Occupy, whether or not Occupy was the best method in Occupy Wall Street, or the die-in with the Black Lives Matter, or should we do protest rallies, or marching rallies, or stand-in rallies? And we can think about the weather, if our fellows or protesters may not be willing to walk for 1 hour and in a 100-degree weather, or sending letters to representatives. All these are important questions to think about in our campaign, in any given campaign. In other words, we should not copy ourselves. We should not copy any other body's earlier movements, even our own past experience. Try to think first about our own movement, about our location, and about our audience. We need to think a little bit about what can work best for you.